Thanks for coming. This is very much just a gentle conversation. We want to find out how you're getting on, if we can help. And Lisa's been looking at some of the data and some of the numbers on the dashboard, and we've got some questions for you about all that. And it would be good to go around and hear what everybody's doing, or how far you've got, or what progress you've made. And I thought we would report a little from the other groups of schools around the world, because at some point we will join up with some of those other schools. And I think it's fair to say COVID has made everybody focus a lot on the room. So it's been good, I think, for the project. We've had some nice surprises. The schools that have look, I can show you a couple of examples. So here is the blue line is the CO2 in one of not one of our Spanish schools, but one of our schools, and that was the CO2 before we put the Learnometer in, and then people started to become aware of the CO2 levels, and the yellow line is afterwards. So you can see a very quick reduction, and that was really the children being very CO2 aware, which was nice. This is a temperature one, and you can see there the temperature before we put the Learnometer in. The green band is the temperature zone we're trying to be in, 18 to 21 degrees. Of course, that's hard, but you can see once the children were aware of what they were targeting, the temperature drops and drops and drops, and is almost too low here. They've got it almost below the optimum. So we found a lot that when people have seen their numbers, they've been able to react quickly, and the children have enjoyed reacting to the numbers. So I guess we've got a question whether you can all see your dashboards, and can you all see your data, or do we need to help you get connected to your dashboards? And then not everybody has all their devices working yet, so can we help there as well? And also, sorry, I'm a sip of coffee. It's been a long day. But also, we've been looking at the numbers from your own devices, and we've got some real surprises. So we might talk about that in a minute as well. But perhaps we could go around the room gently and just talk about each of you. And you can say this in English or Spanish. I don't mind. Farid will translate back into English if that helps. Obviously, for me, it would be easier in English, but you're Spanish, not unreasonable.
Or write it in the chat.
Say again?
Or write it directly in the chat so we can translate it directly.
I think people maybe can speak a bit. So the chat window is open as well if you want to say anything in the chat. But so where shall we start? Let's maybe start with the I don't know what order I can see you, but Gonzalo, would you like to say something about your Learnometers and where you are and which school you are and so
on? Well, good afternoon for everyone. And I'm from Sec Atlántico with Jacobo, which is our principal, but is here too. And we started with 6 Learnometers working, and we started to focus on find out which are the critical rooms, so that we started changing for each week the situation of the Learnometers. We have one of them that failed, and we contacted with Liz, and it was changed. So we have again 6 Learnometers working, and we have taken some measures to correct the results we are obtaining to make things work properly. And for example, we have to open 2 new windows in 2 rooms. Jacobo is saying
yes, because we had two classrooms that were more critical than the others. And then before Christmas, we decided to open 2 new windows during the holidays. And it resulted really well because the change was very positive with CO2 measures.
Yeah, one of the surprises for us was the difference between opening windows and doors. I've got some data here. Let me just get out of the way a little bit.
Yeah, because the problem we had was that there was no cross ventilation in those 2.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
we needed to open them so that cross ventilation was established.
yeah, and it turned out with the door. What you see here, this is a school where none of the windows or doors are open. The green and the orange line, the windows are open, but not the doors. And then the bottom line, the yellow line, the windows and doors. And exactly as you say, the cross ventilation made a big difference. And I think also with COVID, we have a webinar coming up on aerosols, but the aerosol droplets that are holding the virus are quite heavy, so they tend to be down at a low level. When you open the windows, the upper half of the room is ventilated, but the lower half of the room is less so. So we've certainly found doors have been a very useful part of what we should be doing. And but I'm pleased to hear once you get the cross ventilation, the figures get very good. And it's very quick. The turnaround is very, very fast. So it's really comforting that you can change it so quickly. What sort of numbers were your high numbers before you did all this?
In some cases, we reach, I think,
1,200 or
200,
1,300. Yeah, really high, extremely high.
And after that, we are not going above 800 or 850. So it's
That's good. It's good. Yeah.
Improve the things.
Yeah.
And another thing you said before, Stephen, it was that both students and teachers are they get aware of the importance of these things. They at the beginning they need to have the view of the device, but afterwards, once we started changing in different rooms, teachers were using the same protocols, despite the device is visible or not, and that's really, really great.
Yeah, no, that is very good, and the dashboard I think is good because you can look at the data over a period of time, and it's good to see progress. It's quite.
The dashboard is like magic.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's
yeah.
The behaviour is the extraordinary thing as well, and this was the children in Dubai, who had and their CO2. You think yours is high at 1,400? They were up over 5,000, so they were really high because it was very hot outside, so the air conditioning was just making the air cold, but it wasn't bringing new air in. So it just went round and round, got worse and worse. But you can see here is the academic performance before and after, and the green is after, and you can just see the numbers are higher. And the same when we broke that down by subjects, it was the same. But they did an interesting thing of doing a little analysis of one student at a time, just to look subjectively and say, well, yes, she seems to be fidgeting more or less, and the gains across the board there were really, really surprising, to the point at which they had children, they'd had to call the parents in because they were so dissatisfied with them, and the children changed just because of the CO2 numbers. This was what they did they did plant walls, so they had a lot of plants. They couldn't open the windows, 50 degrees outside, so they put a lot of plants in the room, and that also, by the way, leveled up the humidity. So, well, one of the things we've been looking at is whether, because the sensors in the Learnometers are very, very accurate. We probably spend too much money on the sensors, but they were the best we could find. And So it's quite noticeable when they move in the room. We get quite different figures. So I don't know if you've tried moving them around to different parts of the room, but you will see different numbers around the room for sure.
Another
Steven,
thing that is
a small,
interesting, once you talking about the weather, we are in Galicia, in the northwestern part of Spain, and we have winters that are very variable, and the days we have low pressure outside without wind are very difficult to ventilate, and the days we have strong winds, or more or less the windy day, it depends on the orientation of the wall of the school, of the room. So it's really interesting how the same protocols with different weather outside and can change the figures dramatically.
Yeah, it's a big difference.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a really nice observation because, I mean, I taught in schools for many years, and one of the things teachers always say is that when it's windy weather, the children's behaviour changes, and it's especially true certainly in England because windy weather comes from a different direction usually to the ambient weather. So I guess that's certainly down on the west coast. That would be very true. The difference between the strong onshore southwesterly and maybe something coming in from the continent would be very different. That's an interesting observation. Thank you.
Yeah, and the rain is also a problem now because this winter is really rainy here, up here, well, or down here, depending where you are. And Gonzalo, it was last week or 2 years, 2 weeks ago, when we had heavy rain and not wind at all. So it was really difficult to have the right ventilation in classrooms because we couldn't open the windows much.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about that always is then the children become suddenly aware of all that, and they notice, and
Yeah, they do.
and that's a good thing. That sort of metacognition, reflective practice, meta awareness, call it what you will, but children thinking about their learning is just a good thing. It really does help. And we've had. I'm just looking at the rainfall here. It's been very high. I live on the east coast of England, and we're very dry here, drier than Beirut. But this month we have 165 millimeters of rain already, and that's more than we see in a year normally. So yes, it's a very strange weather. Now, Enrique, you were going to say something. You were waving down there. How has it been for you?
Well, it's been an interesting experience so far. We started deploying learnometers across different types of rooms, including coordinator rooms, the areas where the students have lunch, for example. We started with a lot of ventilation, and we started reducing it progressively, looking at the numbers in order to find the optimum for each type of classroom or space. So we ended up settling with the 10-20-10 rule, 10 minutes of ventilation, 20 minutes closed, and then 10 minutes of ventilation. But we quickly found out that that didn't work for all the spaces, obviously. So we ended up classifying the rooms by types, as was suggested at the beginning. And then we ended up having a tailor-made ventilation mode, so to say, in order to keep the levels of CO2 in check. It's good because the visibility of the learnometers has helped us raise awareness between the staff and students. And we've also seen what you were mentioning, that placing the learnometer at different heights within the room, even in the same spot, generated very different levels.
Yeah.
So we are considering
surprisingly different.
Yeah. So at first we installed them at probably 2/3 of the height on the wall, and we're considering moving them down to have the worst case scenario measured in order to have, the most restrictive data. We've also had support from CSIC, from Consejo Superior de Investigaciones Científicas, who provided us with air purifying industrial machines.
Wow.
And I think, Xavi, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we've got 5 of them.
Five.
Deployed in the residence. We have them in the lunchrooms, and we have them in the P5 in Infantil, and the results are pretty impressive. At the end of the day, it's just a particle filter, a very dense one, but it makes a huge difference.
Is that a HEPA filter?
I don't have the exact specification because these are sort of prototypes, but I guess we can ask the SIG to provide some information in order to.
One of the people who's speaking at the aerosols webinar later on this term has been putting very high level filters into classrooms in Finland, and they're quite expensive. They come straight from the health service. They don't need to be that good, I don't think, but they found some remarkable changes in just general health and well-being, and just teachers getting less colds and so on. So that's been an addition to the obvious reduction in microparticulates or in TVOCs. They've just found they've pulled a lot of germs out of the air as well. We don't have that data for COVID, of course, but it's interesting how suddenly everybody's interested in that dimension of the classroom. Well, what would you say the difference is between the rooms that you've classified that need more ventilation and the ones that need less? Is it to do with upper and lower windows, or is it to do with the volume, or what?
It mostly depends on how many square meters of window area and door area they have. 1 door versus 2 doors, 1 full side of the room versus 2 or more sides of the room with windows. And it also depends obviously on the occupation. There are groups that are 15, for example. There are groups that are 20 something. And that obviously makes the biggest difference.
Yeah, and the size of the children as well, a little bit.
Yeah, we've also noticed that when the heating system started to work the most, it helped us sort out the problems that the people from SEC Atlántico were mentioning, that Gonzalo and Jacobo were mentioning, because that kept the delta temperature, the difference in temperature between the room and the outside, different enough to allow for convection and the air to move.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah, that's I thought you were going to say the heat was fan driven, but just the temperature difference gives you that convection current. In fact, I'm just building a house here. We're putting an air source pump in the wall, which generates a lot of energy just from those temperature differences. So that's very useful. That's a useful observation.
And also from an architecture point of view, the way our buildings are built, that we have all the classes on the outside of the building, so to say, and then we have long corridors on the inside that helps generate that chimney effect, so to say.
Yeah, especially if the corridors have their own ventilation from skylights or the doors at the end, or sometimes corridors are probably have fire doors, and then that sort of stops them. But if you have upward circulation from the corridors, that's very good.
We're thinking about making it mandatory for the doors in the classes to be open always, based on the data that we have, and also supported by the data that you showed. Yeah. And probably the only issue that we've had is that when there's a power cutoff, the learnometers don't turn on again on their own when power is restored. So I'm not sure if that's a limitation of the hardware inside them, or if there's a setting that could be adjusted through an update so that they power on again on their own.
That's a good question. I mean, they should just carry on as long as the battery life continues. So you'd have to have a power outage longer than the battery life. The battery life is 6 or 7 hours, so it's quite good. But if it goes off for longer than that, you're right, they do shut right down. And yeah, I'm not quite sure how they turn themselves back on because the battery's gone, and that's. But you'd think when the power came back in, that would be able to trigger a. Well, have a look at that, because the minute the power comes back in from the power supply from the USB 3, that ought to be enough to trigger a turn on. Yeah, thanks. We'll have a look at that.
We'll have a look. We'll
Please.
have a look into that. But I was just going to say, although the power has gone off to the device, as long as there's battery power, it will continue to collect data, and then when it goes back online to the Wi-Fi, it should upload the data that it's collected while there was no power, but it was running from the battery.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
that's sort of what I
Yes.
was saying. As long as the power comes back on before the battery's gone,
Yeah,
you're fine. But after that, it's
unfortunately, once the power is off and the battery has died, then it will need a human being to go along and switch it back on again. I'm afraid.
yeah, but it should. I mean, it might be possible. We'll have a talk about this offline. It might be possible. It ought to be able to detect power coming back in once the mains comes back on, and then power comes down the power supply. It ought to be able to detect that, and that should be an automatic restart, and that may be possible. We'll find out.
Yeah.
Thanks. That's a really useful bit of feedback.
Enrique is right. It happened sometimes in the university with some kind of, power failure in some situations. The device freezes. So you imagine that it's working, but the pilot is lit, but the device is like blocked. It blocks when you have a power down.
I think as well
in some cases we have seen this, and we have to restart it from scratch. You have to reset the device.
I think as well it depends as well how long the power has gone from how your Wi-Fi is powered as well, and if the power has gone from your Wi-Fi for long enough, if you have a power outage enough on the device and on the Wi-Fi, then it's not happy at all. But we can certainly look into that.
It happened. We have seen this. We have seen this, and we have to reset the device from scratch.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. That's a separate problem in a way, that the device is still alive, but the Wi-Fi has gone down, and that's okay because they remember their own data, so there's no loss of data. But then when the power comes back on, the Wi-Fi comes on slower, and by then the Learnometer decided the network isn't there. So it may be a setting of how often it checks the Wi-Fi. I'll have a look at that. That's useful.
We'll ask the question for sure.
Maybe a quick patch would be have the Learnometer send a notification through the dashboard or via email when the battery reaches less than 5%.
Yes.
Because that will have you automatically go or send someone to actually check the device. Because the issues that we've had is that power goes down, battery dies, Learnometer doesn't turn back on itself again.
No, I understand.
When we know this, we might have lost like a day or two of data. That's why our graphs sometimes, have blackouts.
We'll have a look at that whole spread. I mean, presumably this doesn't happen very often. You don't often have power down for 7 hours, or is that fairly unusual, or has it happened?
Well, I'm being told that now it's sort of solved here at SEC Catalunya, but we've had a rough time with power supply lately, so to say. But thank you.
I blame COVID or Brexit or something.
Enrique, you have two devices that I looked at this morning. One of your devices, the P5, it has a constant sound reading of 62.6. It's like it's sitting next to a fan or perhaps heating, I'm not sure. But it's a very constant sound reading all morning until when I looked at it about an hour ago.
I've identified that to be it being influenced by the air purifying machine that we have in P5.
Oh yeah.
Probably the ground noise level that it produces,
Yeah.
you actually don't notice it while you're in
know.
the room, but it probably hits a certain frequency or something that
Yeah.
you know has the
When I looked at
sensor.
when I looked at all of your other data, everything moves up and down nicely, and then there's just this one noise. all the way.
Yeah.
But you know what it is, so you've seen it.
Yeah, we saw it, and the first surprise was, why does it have a constant sound level even on weekends?
Yep.
So that got us thinking,
Yeah.
and then we figured out that the purifying machine was working like 24/7 because they should be doing that.
That's what they should do. Yeah.
And then we linked it to that.
Sometimes it helps if you stand them on a piece of foam rubber or a piece of soft cloth, because a lot of the noise gets transferred through furniture or through floors, and maybe cushioning it in somewhere, putting little feet on it, or that might work maybe. Who else is, what else have we learned from others? Right,
Well,
what have you got?
Hi, Stephen.
Oh, hiya.
Hi, everyone. From Almeria, from Secalboran. The same as the other schools, we decided to put the learnometers in different places. The most critical or the hidden classes or spaces that we can suspect that the levels are worse for the student. We measure in the same spaces, the same surface, but a different orientation throw us a lot of different data. So we put only fixed from the beginning in the dining room, because it's the high number of students with more permanence during 2 hours, 3 hours in a day. And the results are very surprising because, well, in our dining room, we have big windows, and using the cross ventilation, it works very well. The noise is the problem in the dining room in Spain. So it's in it's the same problem in all the schools probably. And for us, the most confused data are with the total volatile organic compounds, because sometimes we can find very high results when the school was closed and without anyone in the buildings. We suspected at the beginning, and maybe in the cleaning service, because some high results were at 6 in the evening, 7, but sometimes even in the weekend, during the weekend, we have very high results, and we don't know what is the reason.
I think it's fair to say, looking across the data from all of them, the TVOC numbers have been the biggest surprise. Lise, do you want to give us a sense of the range in some of those numbers we've seen?
Well, yes. So some of your devices, or the ones that I particularly looked at today, there was one device with 1,020 TVOCs, but there was another device with 12,000 TVOCs. So we've had, there's a big range. So it's interesting where your device might be to have that such readings even at the weekend. You can associate them. Normally we've associated them with cleaning products, but we have associated TVOCs with smokers. Now it may be that people aren't smoking next to the device, but perhaps if they've been for a cigarette and then they come back and they perhaps breathe near the device, that can give you very high readings as well. So yeah, as I said, some range from very low to, there's another school I noticed today, I think it was 32,000.
Wow, that's huge, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I mean,
37,000.
Yeah,
37,000 is our school in the lab.
What's in the lab, is it? Oh, of course.
I didn't pick out on your school actually. It was another school that had a very high rating. You're safe.
Yeah, thank
So
you.
again, I don't know if this is is this cleaning products, or perhaps somebody has had.
Well, in that case, it's a science lab as well, which is an interesting
yeah. So
reflection of what we do about that.
Yeah. When we read what we don't know here is where your devices all are. So in some ways, it would be interesting to have a collection of photographs of where your devices are, because perhaps we'll see something that you don't.
Well, yeah, that would be really helpful for us as we look at the data. Just take a picture of their location. There's no right or wrong location. It just helps us to understand the data. But I think that TVOCs, there's no ideal minimum. You just want it to be as low as possible. No, naught would be good. So some of these numbers up in the tens of thousands are really, really,
Yeah.
really high levels, and it's not for long. I mean, they're not there all day.
No.
They just seem to hit those peaks. I mean,
Yeah.
most often, certainly in the Australian schools, that was associated with cleaning material. We had one school where the poor old head teacher, when we went to visit, she had really bad headaches, and she'd really been not well for a term or two.
Yeah.
And it turns out they were cleaning her room 2 or 3 times a day because she was the head,
Yeah. But at the beginning, we thought that it was the reason, because we used some chemical products to clean the tables during the day.
Sure, but not at the weekend, is it? That's not.
Yeah. That's true. Thanks God, we are not at the school even in the weekend. But well, that's the I think the most remarkable thing in my school.
We have one school in Tasmania where the TVOCs were so high, and in the end we discovered that the school was built on some sort of rubbish tip, and
Really?
this was coming up through the floor of the school. So it was all a bit of a disaster. They had to close the classroom block and completely take the floor out, and that was a terrible to do. But the figures were very high, and like you, they couldn't work out how can it be bad at the weekend? There's nobody in the room,
Yeah.
And it was actually coming through the floor of the. So if they are high, it'd be good for us to have a proper look and see if we can work out what's going on.
Stephen, we're being asked quite rightly, where should they send their pictures? So should we? I suppose it depends. Do we want a group folder for everybody to put their pictures? It depends if we want to share or if they just come to us. What would you?
Yeah, I think if you're happy to share them with each other, then we'll just set up a Dropbox folder and invite you all in. But is everybody happy with that? I mean, nobody outside our little group here will see them. The other school groups won't see them. But if you're happy with that, if you're not happy, just mail Lise. She'll put her email address in the chat window. You just mail it to her, and then we've still got it. But we'll invite you all into the Dropbox. You can put in, and if you wanted to put in anything else you think's relevant as well, it'd be interesting to see the air filter boxes and so on. That would all be really helpful. Isn't it interesting that you actually see, once you start seeing the data, you see a whole nother window on your teaching spaces? Who else has got something to say about what they've seen so far? And welcome, Mercedes, by the way. I saw you arrive there, running down the corridor.
They changed the time of the meeting, Stephen. I'm not sure everybody necessarily picked up on that.
Ah, right, I didn't.
Hi, here in Santa we have the same problem with the TVOCs, and we found that it was because of the some cleaning products that they used to nebulize in hours where children before the lunchtime, and I talked with them and they stopped doing that, and we didn't have this problem anymore. So we know that it's because of the cleaning products. It's true that we put some device near some windows, or someone that has been smoking. It's true that it increased the level of.
It's very sensitive to smell, even if you smoke and then take several minutes. When you come back in, it's a big surprise for smokers. The numbers still go up.
Even when clean your hands with sanitizer and you touch it for change the device to another classroom or whatever, it helps increase the level. And we have 5 devices. We're having a very good numbers, no, very good results. They are always under 700. We have some classes that is hard to have a cross ventilation, and well, the numbers, the results are higher, but we have very good numbers. And by the way, in the gym, we have it's like we don't have even windows or doors. We have ventilation system that gets the air from the street, and I don't know how to do that. I think it's like a ventilation system, and it's working good. In fact, is the place that is the best ventilation ventilated. So.
We were very pleased with the humidity figures looking across all the different spaces. We know that humidity is a difficult one because it's important to have moisture in your throat and your nose, because this acts as a filter yourself from COVID and other things. So too dry is not good and too moist is not good. So 40 to 60% is what we're looking for here. It's 47 for me here at the moment. So we were surprised to see most of you within that range, because humidity is not something we've really ever looked at much in learning terms, but it turns out to be the least of our worries, I think, was a good thing. Temperature will be tough, I think, because Spain is pretty well. Most of the schools here are pretty warm in the summer. I know in Farid will agree that the learning lab we built in UCJC has a south facing side and a north facing side, and people open the windows on the south facing side because it's hot, but we always have to persuade them to open the windows on the north side, so we get that through draft, and that people don't seem to be in a habit of creating that draft. So maybe we need to look at airflow drafts a little bit more as well. And I think we could build a device for that. Wouldn't be so hard. How do the children respond? How have they?
They are very responsible. So they are always looking after the device. They're checking all the numbers and they care about it. So, and I get into the class and I explain them how it works and what are the right numbers that they have to look for of the light, and they're always asking me and telling me like, Maria, look at this too. We are perfect. We are talking about it, so care about it.
Yeah, of course. We think. I mean, you've all got enough devices. We think further on in the project, we might get some of the children to take them home and measure their home working spaces. Maybe some of your colleagues as well measure the homework spaces, because we've found those tend to be too hot and too dark for sure. Partly because they're bedrooms, or whatever. And what else have we learned? Who else has got some? This is really interesting, and thank you for all this. It's really helpful. And just to repeat, you can say this in Spanish to Farid, and then he'll pass it on to me. For the webinars, by the way, we're going to be running them in English and Spanish at the same time, so you'll have 2 channels to follow. If you want to pass that on to colleagues, that'll be a useful change, I think. Who haven't we heard from? Daniel, I think. I'm not sure, is Daniel there? Oh, yeah.
He's in the text chat, Stephen.
Daniel's in the text chat, so that's a good.
Yeah, no, we can't hear you, Daniel.
He doesn't seem to be muted. I think he's
No, he's not muted. I haven't muted him.
not quite sure what's happening there. I think he's doing something because.
Yes. Oh, he's going to type. There we go. He's going to type us his questions.
Okay, okay.
It's what he's up to.
You can all see the text chat, can't you? So.
Ah, good man. What school are you at, Daniel? Thank you.
I love that school. Well, I love them all.
Wow.
Well, I know a good number of schools in Singapore, so I know what it's like where you've come from. All we can say, Daniel, is if Lisa or I or any of us can help you get them all connected, and Fareed is just next door as well, so if we can help you get connected and get located, don't be afraid to ask for help. And if you've only just started in January, gosh, what a year! But it's all, as you've heard from the others, it's all really interesting to learn back more detail. And
Perfect.
Oh, that's perfect. Okay, so all we'll say is keep listening to the others for now, and if we can help, well, you've got good people in Castilla, so that's all fine. Who else haven't we heard from? We've got
Well, I was just going to say, Stephen, that to everybody really, that although your devices might look like they're online, they might be teasing you. So they'll appear to be on and lights flashing and numbers scrolling past, but they might not necessarily be connected to the dashboard. So I noticed this morning as well that you've all got your devices, but not all of them were online. So I don't know if there's a monitoring job maybe there for a student, perhaps.
Lise, could you send to everybody a sort of 7 devices, 5 online notes, just individual? I don't think everybody would want to see each other's, but
No, I can do that.
could you do that? That'd be really helpful. And then maybe then, as you say, there's a monitoring job of sending some kids off to see what's going on, and then if we can help beyond that. And most of them are online, which is good.
Yeah, no, most not. But I noticed a few of you just had a couple or 1 or 2 that just weren't online. Yeah, Enrique, Enrique, you have a question?
Yeah, so just to make sure I understood correctly, the accurate measure of the devices working properly is the green display on the dashboard online.
Yes.
Not on the actual device. The actual device might be telling us that it's connected to Wi-Fi, but it might not be reporting data to the dashboard.
They're little sneaky machines, I'm afraid. They can look like they are on and everything is dandy, but they're not. They're collecting data, but they're not sending it anywhere at the moment. So yeah, the green light is the one that you're looking for.
Okay, so if every morning at the beginning of the day we're checking the dashboard and making sure they're all looking green, we're on the right path to make sure that everything is correct.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
That'd be really helpful.
Thank you.
It doesn't work. I don't know if when we started explaining to everybody the configuration of the devices, we suggested that you use an app that is available. It's called Aware. Let me see, the Aware Business app. It's an app available from Aware.
Yeah, it's free.
And it's really very interesting because you can control the device remotely. So even you can change parameters. You can notice that the device is not working. You don't have to go to the device. You don't have to open. You have it on your cell phone, and you can shut it down. You can open. Sometimes you can even activate it. You can control the LEDs. You can even with a cell phone you can do it. Okay, if not, I think Liz, we can send them the suggestion to use it, because you remember it was the solution when we had the problems with the.
It is a solution. It's a slightly clunky solution. It might be easier to log into your dashboard using the browser on your phone, so that data is only going to one place, perhaps. But it is certainly possible.
You have control over the device if you have it set up correctly. I can even turn off the devices in everywhere.
Yeah, we're just slightly different, Fareed. I would be worried to guide the schools down that path, but you are right.
It's fantastic, because if you have any anomaly, you can detect it before going to the school, and it's very fast.
So it would depend on, I guess we'll have power users and people who just want to make their learning better, you know. So,
but they are power users.
If you want, this lot all are, they're all good. But if you want a bit more, just something else as well. I mean, this device has been outside. We're doing some work on outdoor learning, and so this one's been outside. It's under the eaves of the building that I'm in, but a couple of days ago it was covered in snow, and the weather is not very good out there, and it's kept on working throughout all that. I'm not suggesting you put them out of doors in the rain, but they're remarkably robust little boxes. They take a lot of stopping, so that's it's just good to know, really, if you have an accident with them or whatever, you know. And I think as we look more at outdoor learning, being able to capture, particularly in the summer, you know, some data from outdoor and compare it to indoor is a powerful thing. Parents are saying, why are my children learning outdoors? Well, partly good for COVID, but partly look at the data, you know. Look at how much better it is. The light levels are remarkable, of course.
Enrique, you have another question?
Yes, I'm not sure if any of the other users or power users, as Farid mentioned, have found this, but if you log in to the dashboard from your cell phone, in my case, an iPhone, the graphs and everything is completely distorted, and it's
okay,
and it's not usable from, at least not from Safari on an iPhone.
Okay.
I've just downloaded the app that Farid mentioned, and that changes the whole story, because actually the data is usable. So for those of you roaming on your phone and wanting to check it on the go, the app might be the way to go.
The readings are better. You can see it. The graphics are very accurate, and it's easier. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so
I can see. Yeah, that looks good, and a lot of data, nice and stable.
And you can control the devices from this app.
Yeah. Cool.
And have you noticed, Enrique, that there's a button there for outdoor air quality? Do you have that on your app?
Button for outdoor air quality.
Yeah. So hang on, here it comes. This is really bad to show it on your phone like this, isn't it? But there's a button down here called outdoor, so it can measure what's happening outside. The company that owns the app have joined with air quality providers around the world, so you can track the quality of your air outside your building as well.
I'm not sure I can see the button you're referencing.
Can you see it on the bottom of mine? So you've got
Me neither.
score, outdoor.
No, I've got all my devices
Yeah.
here, but I don't have anything on the bottom part.
Only devices and menu is the only options that we have.
Maybe,
Okay, well-
yeah, but it's something to explore in your apps anyway. So there's the
It
apps
might
that-
be it might be a location-based
Of
feature
course.
available only in some locations rather than.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Yeah, it might be. To be honest, it's more likely to be in Spain than in England. So I'd be surprised if that was the case, you know. But we'll find out. It may be an upgrade feature, or there may be some other reason. But what's interesting is they're now polling outdoor environments from a whole separate set of data and mixing it with the data you've got on your Learnometer. So that's really helpful because, you know, if you're making a decision about whether to open the windows or to turn up the aircon, for example, it's nice to know what the pollution levels are out of doors as well. It's all part of that algorithm for you, I think. So we'll try and find out why. Farid, have you got it?
Yes, no. I'm showing Enrique something in the middle of my screen. It's infinite scroll. You can configure the device in order to give data continuously, you know, without pushing the button.
Yeah, we've got that in the in some classes where the students are participating in some activities and applying the scientific method to developing the ventilation methods and so on. We've got those on infinite scrolling so that they can see the data without having to actually push the button.
Yeah.
Yes, this is very interesting also in the classrooms. So you avoid this kind of touching the device.
In the early days of development, when we were back to the 3D printed boxes and the original versions, we tried a thing with a set of LED strips in the class because we thought teachers would want to see. They were 7 different colors at 7 different brightness levels. We were trying to make a marker so you could see at a glance if your room, you know, had a problem or had a crisis. And it really turned out to be not useful because the teachers became obsessed. They couldn't take their eyes away from it. Oh, it's turning amber, quick, open the window. It became a big distraction, you know. So that's why the devices don't auto scroll unless you wanted to, because you can get very addicted just to watching the numbers go past you. But as you say, it's easy to switch on with the device. Look, I'm conscious of time. We said not to take too much of your time, and we've taken a whole hour, which was what we promised. So is there anything else anybody has left urgently to ask? And remember, you can always mail Lise or mail myself, but mail me through Lise is the easy way to do it, and we'll get lots of answers. Anybody got anything left to ask? Well, super, thanks very much. And let me just say how useful that was. I mean, I've learned lots from that, and it's really been interesting having this community of mini researchers, you know, looking at all this. And it would be fun to join you up with the Australians, maybe the Peruvians, and see what. I mean, Peru is a funny old place, as you'll see when you see the pollution figures for it. It's very, very dusty the whole time, and hardly ever rains. You know, it's very strange. So it'll be fun to look at some of this from around the world. But for now, thank you very much. Keep an eye on your mail. We've got some webinars coming up, particularly the one on aerosols, where we're not just looking at aerosol in the classroom. We're looking at geocaching schools, some of the things that are coming down the track. So a delivery van will not be able to get to your school if it's in a polluting. You've got a polluting engine. It'll just cut out short of the school, and they'll have to park and carry the goods. So there's some really interesting impact on schools coming from all this environmental data. But the biggest one, of course, and I'm pleased to hear it from all of you, is the impact on the kids. Just being interested in it is a huge advantage. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for your time.